Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Nico Iamaleava, who really made pretty much his first public appearances as the quarterback of the UCLA Bruins. Okay, at this point, we don't need to revisit what happened in Knoxville, but, Nico was the starter, made the playoff. We thought we knew why he left in April. Now, he has a little bit of a different version of events, which he discussed at Big Ten Media Day. And we're going to get to some quotes in a minute. Before we get to them, let me just be transparent. I think I've been fair to Nico, but I also think I've been critical as well, and I think I've been critically fair of Nico. I do bring it up to say I give him credit for showing up to Big Ten Media Day, answering questions, and I give credit to UCLA for bringing him. With that said, just because he showed up and just because he spoke, I think he tried to pull the wool over our eyes, and I just don't know that I was buying it or pretty much anybody was buying what Nico had to say about his departure from Tennessee, okay? So let's get into a couple different quotes. Let's just talk about what he said, because essentially, let me just set it up, is that basically every quote centered around two things on why he left Tennessee. One, wanted to be closer to family, and two, it was definitively not about money. Like I said, you can say what you want. Just because it's your version of the truth doesn't mean it's the truth, but let's get into the quotes before we kind of break them all down, okay? So the first quote, this was the one from kind of the general scrum that really kind of made the rounds over the course of Thursday into Friday. Nico said about his time leaving Tennessee, a lot of false reports that made me not feel comfortable in the position that I was in. But in the back of my head, I always wanted to come back home and to be closer to my mom, be closer to my dad, and, just have my family, their support at our games. In our Samoan culture, we're always together, and I think that's the main thing for me, the driving factor for me to come back home. So that was quote number one from Nico. Again, that was in the general media area. Felt like a lot of people kind of shared that quote. Nico saying it was about coming home. It was about being closer to his Long Beach, California, where he grew up. But then there was the second part of the quote. This one I only saw in Brandon Marcello's article at CBS. So I want to make sure to give Brandon Marcello credit. I don't know if he got him one-on-one. I don't know exactly what happened. But here is what Nico told Brandon Marcello about whether money played a role in Nico's decision to leave. He told CBS Sports, quote, not at all. In other words, money not being an issue. My family was strictly the main importance for me. I let my business team, my parents handle the NIL side of things. Just me being closer to family was the most important thing. This, according to Nico Iamaleava. All right, so let's get into those quotes. I'm going to pick them apart with a fine-tooth comb. But I think if I have one theme from this Nico conversation, it is pretty straightforward to me. Everyone is entitled to share their side of events. And again, I am glad that Nico shared his side. By the way, if any of his camp watches our show, you have an open invite to come and argue with me or tell me where I'm wrong, okay? I always try to be fair. I've been critical of Nico dating back to April. But my biggest takeaway from those quotes is pretty direct, and it's pretty straightforward. Just because you have your version of the truth doesn't mean that it actually is the truth. So let's go ahead and dive in. So again, seemingly it feels like there were two elements of Nico's argument or conversation about why he decided to leave Tennessee. One, that it was about being closer to home. Two, that it was not about money, So let's go ahead and dive into each of those because I think they're interesting. Let's start with the money factor, okay? Let me just say, maybe Nico's telling the truth. The counter to that is it would literally go against every single piece of reporting that is out there. And let me even pseudo defend Nico for half a second, okay? It was about money. You don't need to lie to us. But two, even if it was, given the circumstances, I don't know that I totally blame his camp for asking for more. Now, they botched it, 7 ways to Sunday. But I don't blame them, because here is why. It obviously was about money, and it had to be about money, at least to some degree. It's because, again, in defense of Nico, the quarterback market changed quite a bit from the time he committed to Tennessee. Remember, he committed to Tennessee going into his senior year of high school. We know about the dollar figures attached to him. We know the fact that he got paid during his redshirt year, got paid during his high school years, because remember, California has NIL. But the fact is that basically the deal that he agreed to, we saw the contract back when it happened. I think it was The Athletic who was the one who really was able to get the freedom of information to get the contract. It paid him about $2 million a year. And so to say it's not about money, of course it's about money, and here's why. It's because the quarterback market changed, okay? It's not Nico's fault. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. It's just the reality of the situation. NIL and the quarterback market changed. Go back to when he signed. It was for $2 million a year. Well, guess what? Most of the best quarterbacks in college football in the transfer portal were getting more than that this past offseason. A couple names. Darian Mensah transfers from Tulane. He ends up at Duke. There were reports of $4 million a year. Yes, Duke paying $4 million a year for Darian Mensah, some through rev share, a lot through private donors, a lot through the collective. I don't really care. Somebody wants to pay their quarterback $4 million, go do it, whatever. But that's twice as much as Nico is making. And also, we obviously saw the reports about Carson Beck transferring to Florida, collective, NIL, probably in the $4 million a year range. And so from Nico's perspective, of course it's about the money, because I think in his defense, he's saying these guys are getting $4 million. They've never played a game at their school. And I'm getting $2 million after I just led Tennessee to the playoff, the most successful regular season in however many years. Give me a raise. Show me the money. Now, I think he, again, handled it poorly. I think his camp handled it poorly. But to say it had nothing to do with money when the market changed and every report indicated that you were not happy with it, don't pull the wool over our eyes. It's nonsense, okay? But here's the other part. This is my favorite part. I love the part about, well, we just want to be closer to home. We just want to be closer to home. Well, he ended up closer to home, that's for sure. But here's my question. Again, multiple reports. This isn't Torres pulling stuff out of his you-know-what. Multiple reports say that this whole thing, kind of part of how it got uncovered, was because schools that Nico's camp reached out to actually told Tennessee. Now, one was Oregon, but according to an ESPN report, and ESPN actually had it in their report from Big Ten Media Days the other day, that Nico and his camp, they reached out to Oregon, Ohio State, and Ole Miss, among others. And whether it was because they were actually interested in transferring or just to try and drive up the price or use it as leverage against Tennessee, here's the bottom line. One way or another, it picks apart the whole argument that it's not about money, it's not about family. Because if you were, or it is about family, because if you were only reaching out to Ole Miss and to Ohio State and to whoever, Oregon, to raise the price, then it's definitively about money, right? To use it as leverage of, oh, if I enter the portal, this school is going to give me that, so match my offer, Tennessee. So it completely dismisses the first part that it's not about money. But here's the other part. If it really was about getting closer to home, listen, I'd say I'm not great at geography. Hate to brag, I kind of am. Won the 5th grade geography bee back in the day. No big deal, whatever. Probably the height of my academic career anyway. Not great at geography, pretty good though. Columbus, Ohio is not significantly closer to Long Beach, California than Knoxville, Tennessee is. So if it's about family, why were you reaching out to Ohio State? Because here's the thing. I know Columbus is not significantly closer to Long Beach without looking at a map. You know how I know? Because 30,000 Tennessee fans drove up to watch you play in the playoff in Columbus at the Horseshoe. Didn't seem like a long drive for them. They didn't get much of a show. Wasn't all your fault, Nico. I'm not even blaming you. But the notion that it was about being closer to home. Oh, but you reached out to Ohio State, or your representatives, but I think people watching get the point. So your representatives reached out to Ohio State. So your representatives reached out to Ole Miss. I actually did the geography before the show. Torres was on fire today. I did some real prep work. Oxford, Mississippi, to Long Beach, California, a 27-hour drive without stops. Is that really that much closer to Long Beach? I don't know. And so to me, Yes, it was about the money. And if it wasn't about the money, it certainly wasn't about geography and getting closer to home. And lastly, I'll say this. I saw a couple Tennessee fans, or excuse me, a couple Tennessee media members, excuse me, and I'll defer to them on this. They're in Knoxville. They live it every day. They cover it every day. I think the family was mostly with Nico in Knoxville. Now, I know last year, Nico's brother played high school football in California, although he actually didn't play because he got suspended because his dad tried to switch high schools in the middle of the year. That's another conversation. But I know part of the family was in California. But multiple people that cover Tennessee pointed out the family was in Knoxville all the time. I don't know if they shared a house or if the parents had their own house or what the situation was. But what I do know was they were in Knoxville all the time. So this notion that it's about getting closer to home, it wasn't. The notion that it wasn't about money, it was. And that to me, I think is the biggest frustration. And by the way, Tennessee fans, I know what you're thinking. Torres, we don't even care about this kid anymore. Talk to us about Joey Aguilar. That's what we actually care about. I get it. But this is a story. It is nonsense. And I think the disappointing thing to me, and again, I want to be clear. I give credit to Nico for showing up, and I give credit to Nico and UCLA for even bringing him to Vegas for Big Ten Media Days. But what I keep going back to is that it's just nonsense, and his version of the truth is not the truth based on literally any other recounting of the whole situation. And so to me, I just feel like as bad as it was handled in April, and it was handled terribly because I'm sorry, you end up with less money on a worse team. That was handled terribly unless you really just were trying to be closer to home, which again, you weren't. But I just feel like as bad as it was handled in April, it was handled pretty bad last week at Big Ten Media Days as well. There were just ways to deflect, ways to this, ways to that without just lying to our face. You ask about why you left. Listen, that's all you got to say. If I was Nico's PR coach, and by the way, Iamaleava family, I'm happy to be hired. I'll help you out. I come at a cost, but you guys got plenty of money, right? This is all he had to say. Listen, I've moved on from Tennessee. Tennessee has moved on from me. I wish them nothing but the best, but my sole focus is on UCLA. Why did you leave? That's all you got to say. I love Tennessee. I loved my time there. My sole focus is on UCLA right now. There's maybe a time that one day we'll talk about the Tennessee situation, but that's not today. I'm here representing UCLA to preview the season ahead. That's all you got to say. Then if they ask about the money, say the same thing. Listen, we're not here to get into financials. I'm lucky enough to be playing in the NIL era where I'm able to help my family. But to quote Bill Belichick, I'm on to UCLA. So it's just a goofy story. I think, frankly, I'll be real. I think this is probably going to be the last time we talk Nico on this show. Because guess what? Camps open this week, next week, whatever. And then we're going to have games. And I don't think UCLA going to be very good this year. And it's not even a Nico thing. That's not even like a Nico shot or whatever or a criticism. It's just UCLA plays a tough schedule. They have Utah at home to open the regular season. I think Utah is going to be much better than they've been. They also have a school called Penn State, a little school called Indiana coming off a college football playoff appearance, obviously USC, and a trip to the Horseshoe to play Ohio State. So I just bring it up because wanted to talk Nico. It was a topic that certainly caught a lot of people's attention over the course of the weekend. And again, I credit him for showing up in Vegas, but there was a way to handle these questions without outright lying to us, and it felt like that's exactly what he did.